Let's get into the history of the Fabelmans, and Lacey's got a little history segment. Before we do, I did want to thank one final time TJ Barons and Wade Hemel for helping us with the Summer of Spielberg theme song, which I guess we're hearing for the final time this episode.
Oh, we're playing it?
We're not playing it right now. I'm just saying I wrote a note to myself. Make sure to thank them one more time and not at the end of the episode when nobody's listening.
Oh, that's nice.
Lacey, tell us about the real Spielbergs.
So what I read all kind of happened after this movie came out because people wanted to know, like, okay, this is what he went through. I mean, look at her hair. Her hair is even so similar to the mom's. I mean, it's just the only thing you might not know from the Fabelmans movie or know about his life is that for 15 years, his dad took the blame for this, and he let his kids think that for 15 years he was the reason they separated.
Yeah, that it was his idea.
That is his idea.
He wanted it to happen.
And Steven did not talk to his dad during that period, but they ended up reconciling and had a really good relationship afterward. But I mean, what I understand is he didn't catch it on camera the way that it happened. The affair is not caught on camera the way it happens in the movie, but he does discover it when he's 16, and he does have that moment in his room with his mom. She does cry to him, and she explicitly asks him not to tell. So and you feel it when you're watching Catch Me If You Can, when Leonardo DiCaprio is going through that. It's like he gets it so dead on right, the way that would feel and look, and the way you internalize it, and just it changes your whole personality.
In Catch Me If You Can, DiCaprio's character, like, he doesn't react big. He kind of shuts down. He doesn't ask questions.
But it's perfect. But I guess because I've been there, like at the source of a trauma moment, like when you know when your insides are like melting, your stomach is in knots, and you're just like, you just have this realization in that one moment, nothing will be the same after this. Like you just feel it.
And you don't want to deal with it. You don't want to deal with it. You want to escape the reality of things, and so you shut down.
It's like a 10-yard stare. Yeah. But like you also can't let in the good because you're shutting it down. So you become...
And you're afraid that if you let in the good, then that's going to go away too.
All right. Well, and you just kind of start like giving that person the cold shoulder. You keep their secret, but you don't act the way you used to toward the person. But I want to say he was 16. I'm sorry, I did this research on Monday. I want to say he was 16 when he found out about it, and they don't explain how he found out. He just became aware of it, and then they didn't get a divorce from it until he was 19. So like he had to sit with it for years of like knowing it and seeing the uncle come over, Bernie, whatever his name was. So I mean, it truly was traumatic. He basically was watching the train slowly crash.
Yeah.
And then it finally did.
And they were just like in the movie, like, so his parents were both born and raised in Cincinnati. The Joseph McBride book we always reference has a lot of good information about the history of the Jewish communities in Cincinnati and lots of details about their parents and the different sort of Jewish families that they had. Like his dad was more liberal, his mom was more Orthodox. And then, there was Seth Rogen's character, Benny. There's a real life avatar for him, Bernie.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And he was always there, and they called him their uncle.
Mm-hmm.
And the parents got the divorce. The girls were all told, because Spielberg has 3 younger sisters, the girls were all told it was the dad's decision because they were going to go live with the mom, and he didn't want them to resent the mom. Felt like this is a better home for them. I will be the bad guy. And basically the truth was not told publicly until Spielberg's dad died a few years ago. What? You
said the girls were told. They were all told this. Just because Steven knew that his mom had an affair going on doesn't mean he knows that that's why the divorce ended. It took 3 years. It's just as viable that the dad just decided this wasn't working for him anymore, and it's his fault. Because the mom would have just kept going on.
No, the story as I understand it is, when they announced they were getting a divorce, it was because he wanted to move. He wanted to go be by himself, and she wanted to move back to Phoenix.
Yeah. They told all 4 of them, not just the girls.
I mean, there's this LA Times story where they interview Spielberg and his 3 sisters, and they talk about how horrible it was for Steven to live with this knowledge for so long and not be able to talk about it.
Okay, but he only has the knowledge of an affair. He doesn't have any proof that that's not why they got a divorce. Okay, whatever.
Basically, he knew he knew why they were getting divorced, but his dad didn't actually come out and say, this is why we're getting divorced. He made like it was his fault and this is what he needs to do.
Yeah.
And that's one thing that they didn't really touch on the movie, if I remember correctly. It just all of a sudden, they say all of a sudden he's living in California and she's in Arizona still, right?
Well, no, they all went to California together, but it just...
Well, later on in the movie.
Yeah, she moves back to Phoenix.
Oh, yeah, she does move back to... But it was the moving to California that made her understand what she needed to do, because she just got more and more depressed and weird.
Yeah, and I mean, even back in the 90s, I remember hearing interviews of Spielberg saying that his mom was always mentally unstable.
Yeah, you can tell she's bipolar.
Yeah, and he said back then we didn't have names for it. We didn't know what bipolar was.
Right.
And now, and so I remember an interview, he said that I wish we would have known now we would have known then what we know now, because it could have saved the marriage. But
yeah, but affairs definitely happen in fits of mania, and blowing up relationships is a big part of it, or physically damaging stuff, or spending a bunch of money, or taking your clothes off. Like it was, as soon as she goes and chases the tornado. Obviously at that moment I'm like, okay, yeah, this is set in stone. This is what this is. But this is manic, childlike energy she's able to shoot out of herself.
Yeah. And she was feeling that she was getting more attention from him than she was from her own husband. And I think that Michelle Williams did a phenomenal job in this. And I remember when this movie came out, critics criticized Michelle Williams' roles acting, saying that she acted like a soap opera, like I was watching a daytime soap opera.
No way.
I never felt that way. Number one, you don't know how that person actually looked and sounded in real life. Spielberg did. It's her mom. And from what he said in interviews, that she was basically a spitting image of her mom. His mom.
Larger than life.
Yeah, and if you've never been around people like that, you can't identify with that. I mean,
sure.
I have, and people act like that,
right?
And they can sound like that. So I didn't have a problem with that, because I knew that people can actually be like that.
Yeah, there was some criticism along those lines, but it did get a lot of praise, and she did get a Best Actress nomination.
Yeah, she did get a Best Actress nomination.
I thought this quote. This is a quote from the Joseph McBride biography of Steven Spielberg, and this is from 1997. I thought this was fascinating. Quote, some of their Phoenix neighbors found Leah's romantic history a bit outre. I was always confused as to who Steven's father was, said Steven's friend Chris. Catherine Galway, this author just went back and interviewed Steven's old neighbors and friends from all the places he lived. So this person named Catherine recalls that Leah told me she loved both men. She said she couldn't marry them both, so she married Mr. Spielberg. Steven's sister Sue says, we were bohemians growing up in suburbia. Steven once yelled at his mother during his adolescence, everyone else's mother is normal. They go bowling, they go to PTA meetings, and they play bridge. End quote. So it is funny to think of them as little kind of bohemians in the 60s. The
movie handles it perfectly, because that is exactly what it feels like. They all feel like they're part of a multi-spouse family. I mean, it's clear the uncle provides something that the dad doesn't, and vice versa. And the dad's busy enough to be like, it's okay.
To me, it was she's manic, she's bipolar, she acts like a kid a lot of times. He is much more mature and matter of fact and black and white, while
she's an artist.
Bernie was more loose, laid back, and have fun.
And like to engage with her the childish stuff that she did. Yeah,
so I'm sure she felt belittled by her husband when she acted that way, and so that's like I said, she loved them both.
The movie made that. I mean, that I felt that.
Yeah.
And I've seen it in my own life. I've seen that happen where, okay, you love them both, but which one are you going to go with? Well, you're going to go with a more responsible person. But then I had more fun with this person. And, and so, I mean, and I think that the movie, like you said, handled that perfectly, the way they handled that.
the heartache.
I like that it makes a point of saying like Paul Dano's character, he gets her too though. Like he gets her in a way that Uncle Benny does not. Like he appreciates her on an intellectual level, and you can see like he really, really is in love with her.
Yeah.
It's not like this isn't a case where she is not appreciated.
Right.
Yeah.
It's just
they didn't become enemies. They were still close friends after the divorce.
Yeah, I read that so she married Bernie.
Mm-hmm.
He went and got remarried, and then Bernie died at 75, like relatively young, and then both of his parents lived till they were 100.
Oh wow.
After Bernie died, apparently
She started a restaurant.
she started a restaurant, and then Arnold, Spielberg's father, and Leah, his mother, then became really good friends along with his new wife.
Oh,
Said they were the Three Musketeers after that. And
just like the Three Musketeers that they were before.
Yes.
That's kind of beautiful.
And his father's new wife, when she died, she was buried next to her first husband. And so there's this question, Arnold Spielberg, where are you going to be buried? And they invited him to be buried next to Leah and Bernie, and he says, okay, as long as I'm next to Leah, not to Bernie. So they're all buried in the same place.
Aww.
Okay, I mean, the genesis of this movie is during the pandemic. Spielberg, like for the first time in forever,
didn't have 7 things to do.
Right, he's just forced to stay at home, and so a lot of his kids come back and live in the same. It's like we were all under one roof. He says. Now the roof, he probably means like the little village they own.
Right.
Compound, yeah, but suddenly I was seeing my kids twice a month, running into them at the restaurant that we own. But yeah, he's a very social person. He needs constant stimulus, and he suddenly thinks this could all be taken away at any moment. Making movies. What movie? If I can make another movie, what's the movie that I need to make? And it's been the idea that's been percolating in his head since 2005 when he made Munich.
This is a movie in a movie, like, well, duh. But his dad, when his mom is heartbroken over losing her mom, he, please put your other stuff aside and please make this movie. This is the movie that will mean something to your family. Please make this. And that's what he finally did, because they both were asking him to make a movie of what happened.
Yes, and you can read like quotes from his sisters. Like they said, like I've seen it 7 times. I've seen it more times than I can count. It's really hard to watch, but they all feel like this is actually a movie of our lives.
That's amazing.
Well, what I liked about it too is it didn't get melodramatic. It didn't get too into all the, you could spend 2 hours just on the mom alone with all of her problems. It could be turn into a therapy session. It didn't. It was still fun. It was still fun, and engaging, and entertaining.
He has such a gift for that.
And
this movie is a blast. It's so entertaining.
And it has no right to be.
Yeah, because it's not a downer. You don't feel sad afterwards after you watch it. And especially that ending shot, when he goes in and talks to David Lynch, who plays John Ford, right? Mm-hmm. And he talks about the sunset or the horizon.
The horizon.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And then you get that little tiny nod at the very ending where the camera isn't at the horizon and it tilts up to the horizon. Mm-hmm. It made me chuckle. It made me laugh. And so, this is not a downer type of movie, which could have easily been, a downer.
Yeah. And I think people were also, when they heard what it is, it's like, it's me as a young kid falling in love with the magic of the movies. I hear that sentence and I'm annoyed. That sounds like an annoying movie. And it's one that I feel like a lot of filmmakers are making that movie recently. A lot of Belfast and
a lot of friends that I know said when they heard this was announced and that Spielberg was directing it, they said, "Well, that's pretty pretentious of him."
Yeah,
it's his fucking story.
My thought, exactly. That was my thought. My thought is, well, who better to direct it than the person who lived it?
Right.
If someone else directed it, they may put in Hollywood cliches or Hollywood stuff that wasn't,
and they wouldn't get what bipolar looks like, right? Like the reason why you and me felt it, Paul, is because we've been around it, and it's so nuanced, and you have to do it with love because you do still love these people, even though they're unpredictable and they're larger than life, and that maybe they suck all the air out of the room sometimes, but they also give it back, in the intense passion and love that his mom had for his movies is beautiful. And I don't know, all the emoting can make you feel really supported, even if sometimes it leaves you in the dust.
I feel like this video could turn into a therapy session just talking about her mom.
Yeah.
And how we can all relate to it.
Yes.
The quotes, I mean, going back to the beginning of his career, he gushed about his mom and how she was the biggest supporter of his career. Yeah. His dad, not so much. And he had a rocky relationship with his dad basically up until the 90s. Like, you know, like at the end of the movie, Paul Dano says like, maybe it's my fault. I should have stamped this out, you know, earlier when I could. Yeah. And it's like his dad was still kind of saying stuff like that to the press. Like Raiders of the Lost Ark opens up and he's like, yeah, I guess he made this movie. Whoa.
Well, and he was still, like you said, in the 90s trying to get his dad's approval. He specifically made Saving Private Ryan for his dad.
Yeah.
And so even then he was still trying to get approval from his dad.
Well, apparently that is the time when they had they reconciled and became really close. So he wins Best Director for Saving Private Ryan. He immediately stands up and hugs his father and then goes to the stage and thanks his father. It's like his dad never understood movies, but he served in the Second World War. They would talk about it. That was his connection to him. That's why he's made so many World War II movies.
Yeah.
It's like, if I can just get maybe my dad will be interested in this movie if I make Empire of the Sun.
Well, just to call it a hobby and to keep calling it a hobby, but when you're spending tens of thousands of hours on something and you're doing it better than a hobbyist would, and you're making something special, and like your own parent can't see it, how frustrating that this is valid too. That why do we go to the movies? Why do movie stars exist and writers and directors? And if that's not a profession.
And like the way his dad is talking about, like, I do real things. I build computers and circuits and stuff. It's like, that's what he does too.
Right.
You're so blind to how similar it is. But I think that one reason I love the ending scene with David Lynch and the thing with the Horizons is Sammy Fabelman at that point actually is still kind of thinking movies the way his dad does, which is thinking of it in terms of technical achievement.
Yeah. Right.
And David Lynch as John Ford is like, no. We can all do that shit. What are you trying to say? What are you doing with it? Why is the horizon here interesting, but in the middle, why is it boring? Figure that out.
It's interesting on an emotional level. Like, and I think it's so awesome. Like, you don't expect this side story of him in school and him making this senior ditch day movie. And it's right after something horrible happens to him. But like, he sees in real time what his framing of things can do, that he can get back a bully by showing what he feels is the real him, and he can tear apart two friends by showing one how they're so different from the one that they stick themselves to. And it just, the power, you know, he's a short guy, he's a Jewish person in a non-Jewish place, but he can have your balls in his hand if you give him 10 minutes of fucking footage.
And in this way that like this big tough guy like can't even put words to.
I mean,
I love that. I love that scene with the bully.
And the short little mean guy, like, they all end up believing it. I mean, except for like you see some real like depth in the jock, because he immediately realizes Steven put on screen what people see him as, and that's not what he sees him as. And the bully is like, why'd you tell him? Like, he made the bully see exactly what he already thought of himself.
Yes.
Yeah, and I can even relate to that. Is people like I've in the past I've shot things with friends, and then they watch and are like, wait, am I really like that?
Right, right.
Because they, you know, you don't think of yourself as that until you see yourself actually doing that. Kind of the old saying, look yourself in the mirror. And so Spielberg used that as his weapon to protect himself and to get back at the bullies. And also to try to make friends with the bullies, to turn them around to actually be friends, not enemies.
But what I love about the thing with the bully is I think also, though, he doesn't actually know why he made the bully look so good. And I think he says, maybe I was just trying to make the best movie. And that could also be part of it. He's like, I hate this guy personally, but he's got the juice.
But I don't think
the riz.
I don't think he hates that guy. I think all along they're peppering it with little signs that this guy is only being taken down by this really toxic person.
Well, yeah, okay.
I mean, that we're watching the story and then we watch him tell it with a movie in the movie. And it's like he shows you in just a few minutes the power that he has to see people accurately, or see people in a way that he can convince an audience of a person's character.
Yeah,
with storytelling.
I'll say one thing with my personal experience. I would film weddings and events like to actually make money and put bread on the table. And my sister-in-law was helping me film a wedding, and I would film like guests watching and things like that. And afterwards, my sister-in-law, she was filming stuff, and she noticed something between two people, how they looked at each other, two single people, and how they looked at each other. And she said, "Did you notice that?" And I said, "No." And she said, "You can see much clearer in the lens of a camera than you can just looking around." Meaning that if I didn't see it, and I was looking at the same people, but she saw the type of look that they were giving each other through the lens of the camera. And so that just goes back to the power of what we were talking about, the power of the camera, the power of the lens, that it makes people see themselves differently than they could, or makes you see them differently than they are.
Because it's washing away the noise, right? And at any given moment, there's a million things you could focus on in the room. But when you've got a director who knows what he wants you to see, and even what he wants you to see on just one person, with those, you just see the beginnings of all the way he shoots things, like from the ground up or from over the shoulder, or is it the perspective of the person? Am I the fly on the wall? All those things are storytelling choices, not gimmicks, in the right hand.
Right, exactly.
All right, let's try to. We're all over the place. So let's try to go through the plot a little bit.